divided it up because our 9-year-old daughter's in charge of the deodorant. So it's not all on Sarah. We're spreading it out.
It only gets worse when you get older. So.
Oh boy.
It's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good day. Yeah, cause I can feel it in the air. Yeah. It's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good day.
Patrick, we're seeing the controls to the audio there, which is that's kind of a cool, different thing to see.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
11:02.
All right. Well, let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming. I'm Lou Solomon with Interact Studio, of course, and this is a really, really special edition of Human Touch. Not only is it the last edition of the year of 2021, but it's the edition when we showcase our third annual Community Voice winner, Tony Mecia. And we're so excited for you to hear all about him. You will in just a moment. Tony's the founder and publisher of the Charlotte Ledger, and he has a very unique reason for our having received the nomination and given him this award. Plus, we're just so happy that we have Matt and Tim here, Matt Olin and Tim Miner, to be our guest hosts and do the interview with Tony. They are certainly a part of the Interact family, but as you know, they are executive directors and co-hosts of Charlotte is Creative. So we want to jump right into it and use every second that we have with Tony. So Tim?
Thanks, Lou. Oh, good. I just got a message that my battery is running low. I'll tell you what, Matt, can you just talk for 1 moment about what Charlotte is Creative is? And I'm going to sort out this technical problem.
That's right. You get on that. So Tim and I are the co-founders of Charlotte is Creative, and we're really here to help support and advocate for and connect the creative community in Charlotte, to make sure the conditions are right here, whereby creatives of all kinds, of all disciplines, of all crafts can realize sustainable, fulfilling businesses and careers here in Charlotte. And we really subscribe to a broad definition of creativity. We include journalism, writing, you name it. It all is creative, supremely creative work to us. And that's why the work that Tony's doing on the journalistic landscape here in Charlotte is, in our minds, creative work, incredibly creative work. And so it's quite an honor for us to be able to interview Tony in light of this award, kind of through that lens of creativity. Tony, would you agree? Is this a creative field for you from your standpoint?
I think so, and thanks for having me today, and thank you, Lou, and Interact, and Tim and Matt. Appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a creative field. I mean, you're making choices, you're doing things differently. I mean, there are things that are very technical about it, but then there's using your mind and making choices and trying to make things interesting. I mean, those are all, I think, creative endeavors.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Tim, how's your battery situation?
I'm good. So my computer was like a child. Just when I needed it to perform, it wanted to throw a little bit of a tantrum. Well, it's a great honor, I think, as Matt said, to introduce and then have a conversation with Tony about the media landscape and how he's disrupted it. And just to measure, I think Tony, one of his central qualities as I've gotten to know him is a lot of humility. And that answer, is it creative? And it's like, yeah, I think it's creative. What they do at Charlotte Ledger is supremely creative. They have elevated the quality of writing and journalism that is available in Charlotte considerably. And that humility extends to Tony's bio. So, to prepare for this, I'm going to read verbatim, and I hate reading verbatim bios, but this is Tony's bio from his own website. The Charlotte Ledger was founded by Tony Mecia, an award-winning former Charlotte Observer business writer and editor. He lives in Cotswold with his wife and 3 children. Period.
There it is.
Look, why go on and on, right? Let's just writing. You want to keep it short, you want to keep it punchy. And you don't want to bore people. So that's kind of what we're about. So
But this
why not
is-
just do that on my own bio?
But this is what I have loved about getting to know and dare say of the friendship that I've formed and the regard that I have, and I know Matt has for Tony over the last few years, is that he is a man who reveals himself through his work, through his integrity. He says what he's going to do. He does he does those things. He is no nonsense. He is trustworthy, and if he says something, you can believe it. I asked to have coffee with you, Tony, probably about 2 years ago, which now we're talking about COVID time. So that's like nine years ago. We had coffee at a Panera, and I wanted to get to know the man that had the chutzpah to start to Ledger, who in a very crowded media marketplace thought he had a voice and had a vehicle and wanted to create a vehicle that presented information differently and that championed the dying art, in my mind, of long form copy. We've all seen incredible changes in journalism over the last few years, and Tony and now Christina with him and all of the writers that they have recruited dare to swim upstream in a marketplace that says that attention spans can't handle it and that people don't want to dive deeply into stories. The Ledger presents the facts as they are, but in a way that treats its readers as adults. So he is, in many ways, you probably have never heard me say this, a mentor to us in the work we do. He is an inspiration. He makes us push harder, and he is our friend. So Tony, now that I've thoroughly embarrassed you because I've tripled the amount of words you said in your own bio, let's ask you some questions.
Yes, and I'm going to start, if you don't mind. So Tony, let's go to the origin story. What led you to want to be a reporter? Why was journalism the path for you?
I'll try and keep, there's a lot I could say. I'll try and keep my answer brief. If I go on and on, feel free to interrupt me. But no, my background's in journalism. I've been here in Charlotte for more than 20 years. I was with the Observer for 10 or 12 years, left in 2009, did some freelancing for a while, worked for a national magazine. Started looking around, in the beginning of 2019, I said, well, okay, I'll go back to freelancing. I could do something else. But I started looking around locally here in Charlotte. And I said, the environment for local media has gotten really weak. A lot of the traditional media had been slimming down. A lot of it was, focused on food and bars. I love going to restaurants. I love going to breweries. There's a lot of that kind of coverage. And it just seemed like the sort of the things that people really wanted to know. Like it used to be you would read about them in the paper. You'd be like, wow. And now it's like, well, you just hear things from friends like, oh, did you know what's being built over there? What's going on? And so I said, look, there's an opportunity. My background's in business journalism, by the way. And so I thought, well, maybe I could start something up that's sort of oriented towards this community that I know exists, that there's a hunger for, information about growth and development and retail and all the other, banking, all kinds of things, but do it in a way that's interesting, right? A lot of times you say business journalism and people's eyes kind of start glazing over and they say, oh yeah, okay. It's not exactly the guy you want to talk to at the cocktail party necessarily. A guy says he's really enthusiastic about Nucor's third quarter earnings or something. But let's do it in a way that's interesting and relevant to people. And that was sort of the idea, this in 2019. And then I said, well, I'm noticing this trend toward newsletters, that's sort of becoming a newer, it's sort of funny because email's been around for a long time, but there's a vehicle for kind of getting information out to people in a way that, they're not kneecapping you on Facebook through algorithms for who gets what. You have a direct connection to readers who have opted in, who have given you their email address and given you permission to be in their inbox. So I said, well, maybe I can kind of combine all these things, do something that's interesting, do something that's important for Charlotte, give people information that they need to know and that is interesting, and give it a go. And so that's what I did.
Beautiful. Well, I love that. I love that you're sort of like, following the trends, but you're also just following your heart too. I mean, you're just sort of going the path that you're feeling called to authentically. And to me, that is kind of part of the cosmic tumblers that fall into place, right? That's part of it. You got to listen to where you want to go. So that's an awesome answer. Love that.
Tony, during the course of your career, it's been very interesting times in traditional media, and so you are, as you said, a business reporter, but how have you seen the business of journalism change over the course of your career. And again, you've alluded to that in what you've been trying to do with the Ledger, but from where you started as a cub reporter to where it is today, what's fundamentally shifted with how the news and how journalism come together?
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to see, and just trying to take a step back and try and get that perspective on how the news business has changed. But, when I started in the late 90s, it was pretty much, I don't want to say the newspaper had a monopoly, but it was a dominant force, right? I mean, you had the TV stations, you had the Observer, you had Creative Loafing, you had the Leader, you had a number of, publications where people get information. Nowadays, it's like everybody has a megaphone, right? Everybody's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everyone's got an opinion, and the thinking was, well, this is going to be great for democracy. Everybody has a voice, and it turns out it's like, well, there are positives to it, but there are also some negatives to it too, as we know. Anybody who spent any time on Twitter or dealing with trolls or anything like that. So I mean, but the effect on the news business, I think, has been profound. I mean, obviously, a lot of their advertising money, that used to go to support local journalism, has been sort of siphoned off by Facebook and Google. That's meant some huge changes, huge cutbacks, and so now I think we're really seeing a lot more kind of niche players, and that the fact that the recognition that there's not just, you're not just serving a single audience, even if it's geographically bounded, say in Charlotte, but there are multiple communities within that larger audience. And you all see that you're serving the creative community. We're serving not only, I mean, business readers, people who want that meatier kind of journalism. But then obviously there's a market for the other things that are out there, locally. So it's really becoming, rather than having sort of just a couple dominant players, it's really becoming much more fractured. And so, I mean, on the one hand, we're sort of losing a lot of the sort of lingua franca of all of us knowing the same pieces of information, which is sort of sad. But on the other hand, there's a lot of opportunity to sort of develop some of these other communities of interest.
Yeah, it's funny. You made me think about. We were on different sides of things. So I started my career in public relations in the late '90s, and I remember going to a meeting with an Observer ad rep at one point, and this was in like '98, and him saying, "Well, now once this internet fad is over, we're going to get back to business." And just complete. And it is amazing. I think one of the things, and not to pontificate on this too much, but I will just say one of the reasons I love the Ledger is not only has how people perceive information and how publications fund themselves changed. It's also, if something was printed in the paper before, it was widely regarded as truth, that had been vetted. And I think now you have to be very careful of the source. And that's one thing that Ledger has done really well is you do your due diligence, you talk to multiple sources, you present that, and we're able to take what you put in the Ledger much more seriously and much more as fact than many other news sources, even sometimes credible news sources. So I love that.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, that's just a huge change. It's sort of old school. I mean, we're not trying to tell anybody what to think. We're just trying to give them information so they can kind of make up their own minds on things. But we want to do it in a way that's fair, and gives people, a sense that, hey, this is something credible. This is something that's true. Maybe you don't like these facts, or maybe you disagree with something somebody said, but hey, let's just put that out there, and we can agree to disagree, right? It's sort of the old way of doing things, as opposed to a lot of times now it's just you're on one side or you're on the other side of this, and it can get very very nasty sometimes. So we're just trying to do it sort of the old way in a little bit of a new vessel.
Everything old is new again.
That's
So,
right. And there's a community for it too, right? There's interest in it. Like we wouldn't be doing it if there was no interest. So that's encouraging.
Absolutely. Well, Tony, I asked you a few minutes ago about your kind of origin story as a journalist, but I want to talk a little bit about the origin story of Charlotte Ledger in more detail. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of see it through your entrepreneurial brain. So, back in 2019, when you decided to launch it, maybe elaborate a little bit more on those gaps that you were hoping to fill, but also like what were you hoping to accomplish in year one as not just a journalist, but as an entrepreneur, as someone who's launching
Yeah.
something in his city?
Well, no, that's an important point. I mean, the business side of it is critically important. I mean, we can all do things that are interesting and personally fulfilling, but you've got to figure out a way to make that sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when I started in 2019, I mean, I guess the gap I was trying to fill was I just thought there was sort of, as we've discussed, that sort of a need for responsible, smart, well-informed information, from somebody who had lived in the city for a couple of decades, right? That wasn't just sort of parachuting in from somewhere, spend time in Charlotte for a couple of years and get out. So, I mean, I felt like that's sort of, I don't know if it's secret sauce, but it's like if you've been around enough, you know what people find important, you know where to find pieces of information. So I thought that was something that I could add, especially with a business tint, although we've kind of branched into a bunch of different areas now. But the original thinking was it was just sort of, it was going to just try something different. We're going to use this new newsletter platform called Substack, and we're just going to see if people are interested in this. That was sort of the way I started. Completely free newsletter, didn't charge anybody anything, didn't sell any ads. It was just sort of, let's see if there's an audience and let's sort of market test this. Let's just prove that there's an audience. And it was just me at the time. So I was writing a newsletter 3 mornings a week, just on various topics. We sort of round up what other people were doing, do a little bit of reporting, something original, slap that together, 3 mornings a week. There you go. And my original thinking was, well, gosh, if I could get it to like 10,000 people, then if I could, then create a paid version. And I knew that about 10%, the industry average is about 10% of the people maybe will pay. I'm like, okay, then I can get 1,000 people paying at $99 a year. I had no idea how quickly that could happen. Okay. I didn't have really any background in that, but my thinking was, let's just build this and see if it works. And it did take off. I mean, if you look at the growth of the number of people signed up for the newsletter, it increased. It got to the point by the end of the year, I was nowhere near 10,000. I was at 2,000, 3,000. I said, okay, look, I can't just do this for free forever. So let's create a different business model where there's a premium edition, that's for paying subscribers. We'll start selling a few sponsorships and see how that goes. And it was, again, a bit of a leap of faith. People will read this for free. Would they pay to read it? Like, that was a kind of an open question. I thought the answer would be yes, but I didn't know how many. So we turned on paid subscriptions. It was about March 1st of 2020. It was like 2 weeks before. Timing was pretty fortuitous. And people started paying and saying, listen, we want more of this. We like what you're doing. We want to support you. And there are a number of reasons people subscribe. There are a lot of them they want the content, and other people are like, we love what you're doing. Just keep it up. So somewhere on that spectrum between 100% charity and like 100% just give me what I'm paying for. And there are people located obviously on various spots on that spectrum. So that was sort of the idea. We've modified it for a while. I brought in a very talented managing editor, Christina Bowling, from she'd been at the Charlotte Observer for 20 years, longtime friend and colleague of mine. She's been great. And so the fun part now is we're sort of building a team and trying to spread that out a little bit and doing, collaborations like the things that we all have done.
Yep. Absolutely.
Hey, Matt, I'm going to call an audible. I think your next question actually is a really logical way to go with this conversation.
Great. Yeah. Well, then let's talk about kind of where I wanted to go next, which was about building and keeping an audience. I mean, what have you learned about building and keeping an audience? Because clearly the audience is there and those metrics are growing, but you must be learning along the way. So we'd love to hear, your insights on all of that.
Yeah. It's been really interesting because, as you know, my background's in journalism. So we just write articles, talk to people, write up pieces, put them in. Now it's like there's this whole business side of like the audience development side, the marketing side, the business strategy side that I have absolutely no background in. I don't want to say I'm completely winging it because I do talk to a lot of people who actually know what they're doing or say they know what they're doing. They've been very helpful. But yeah, audience development is a big part of that. And how do you keep that growing? I mean, I think a lot of it is just one of the things you hear a lot is just having an authenticity. I think to you, I think people like that a lot. We try to make it not too personality driven. We didn't name it like Tony's newsletter or Tony's hot takes today or something like that. Suppose we could have done that. I'm not really comfortable playing that role. And I don't think most people, frankly, really care. But I do understand that, having that authenticity and having that voice, I think, is important. And, we've done a number of things to try to grow that audience. Just a lot of it's just experimenting. When you're small, you can, sorry, just seeing a note, I would 100% read Tony's hot takes. Somebody wrote. Thanks. Appreciate that, DC. But yeah, there are a number of things. And the virtue is, we're small. And so we can try some stuff. And if it doesn't work, we go a different direction. We've tried all kinds of things. Part of it, we work with other people, collaborating with people. We've done, Facebook ads. We've done, special offers. There are all kinds of different, I don't want to call them tricks up our sleeve, but there are all sorts of different things you can try to reach new people. But, frankly, word of mouth is the best. Just if someone recommends us to their friend, I think that's extremely valuable. Just having somebody say, hey, you should check these guys out. They're doing some good work. Hey, you live in Ballantyne? Oh, here's an article they did on Ballantyne. You might enjoy this. Check it out. Just having word of mouth, frankly, is a very powerful one. So there are all kinds of things that we do, and we'll keep trying some stuff.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you've had some moments too, where I know we've experienced with the Biscuit, someone that we really respect will just say something to us like, man, I really love that article. And it's just like, oh my God, they're following it. It's like
somebody's reading.
It kind of blows you away. And not only that, but it's someone that you respect, that, is a stakeholder in their own right. I imagine you've probably had a few of those moments.
It is kind of cool.
Well.
We see, I get an email every time someone signs up to pay. And so you can see, all we really have on our readers and customers is their email addresses. Now, a lot of times you can figure that out, but if the name of someone who is a huge former CEO of a bank comes across, you're like, okay, I think that's pretty good. Or elected officials or business leaders. It is kind of neat. On the one hand, it's listen, we're trying to be we're speaking to the people. We don't work for the, the top dogs and the power brokers, right? But at the same time, when those power brokers subscribe to you, it's okay, I guess we're doing something right. Yeah,
it's doing something right.
So those are nice moments. But we like hearing from all kinds of people too. We get a lot of nice notes. One of the really cool things about it, guys, is that we've gotten the opportunity to work with a lot of really talented people in the city and meet a lot of really talented people in this city, and that's kind of why we do it. It's fun. You get to choose who you work with. There are all kinds of things that we get to do that really sort of keep us going, just by meeting new people, learning new things. That's really the cool part about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a little dismayed to see that we only have 5 minutes left, and we have so many other questions we were going to ask. But one thing you brought up, Tony, a moment ago. One thing I really prize about you and Christina and the Ledger is your willingness to collaborate, and that flies in the face of what has traditionally been a very competitive. Let me get that that lead, that story, that tip before anybody else. And you've leaned hard into working with, doing Flyover Fridays and working with Clayton at CLT Development, doing things with us. Talk a little bit about how collaboration has helped you build a Ledger and what role you see it having in the future of disruptive journalism like you're doing.
Yeah, the number one thing is we just enjoy it. There are a few different points. We enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, you get to meet new people, try new things, figure out different ways of presenting information. That's kind of the personal side of it. The editorial side of it is we just want to be a place that's known as having really good information. And so whether I write an article personally, or whether Kevin Young with the 5 and 2 Project does a video, or whether we're working with Charlotte is Creative on a photo series during COVID, whatever it is, it's no skin off our back to kind of share that content, because we have a small audience, growing obviously, but everybody's got their own audiences, right? And so if we kind of I don't think people are Oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw this photo from COVID. I saw that on the biscuit. Why is the Ledger sending out to me a day later? I don't think people, first of all, really object to that. We want us to be known as having good stuff. And so if we can work with people on developing, good stuff, we're just gonna do it. And I think that is a new way or a different way of thinking of it. It's I think it's acknowledging reality that we're not the only player. And yeah, we love to break news. We like to be first, and we love, all these things that are sort of journalistic pride, basically. But I don't really think it's any skin off our back to just work with really talented people who are doing really cool things in our city. I think it's good. I think it's good for Charlotte.
Well, we obviously agree, and that's one of the things that we admire so much about you and Christina. And I think in the same way that people say Matt and Tim, I'm so thrilled you have the award, but I know Christina is just a huge part of everything that you've done as well.
Absolutely. I mean, she's great. I mean, she's just super nice, super easy to work with, extremely talented journalist. I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, she's great to work with. And I appreciate
All right, so it's 2 minutes left. We've got Tony's hot takes now. All right, so you've got multiple.
We're spinning off a separate newsletter, the Tony's Hot Takes newsletter. Just little single sentence things as they cross my mind.
The market has spoken. All right,
Yeah.
this is that Instagram hook you and I have been talking about all this time. That's how you do it.
Yes. Okay.
But so what?
I'm sorry. How about this? Tony's and Tim's hot takes.
There we go.
Sorry, Matt. If your name started with T, we'd
Listen, I choose alliteration over
Okay.
loyalty any day.
Okay.
We'll call it. No, it's Tony, Olin, and Tim. So and we'll call it Hot Tots.
Hot tots.
There we go.
Ooh.
Hot tot
Hot
takes.
tots.
Now, all right. The serious thing is what opportunities or what cool things can we look forward to from the Ledger in 2022?
Yeah, a number of things. I don't fully know. I've been meaning to get up with Christina and we can talk about it. But no, I can tell you we have some really interesting things coming. We've got our first in-person 40 over 40 event. It's going to be in person at the end of April. It's going to be an 80s theme. We're going to invite the past winners from previous years, and we're going to honor them all. So that's going to be fun.
Will David Hasselhoff be there?
We will see about that. We've been reusing that cameo now for the last 3 years. It's a pretty solid cameo.
Which is another reason I love you, that you paid once and used the Hoff 3 times. That's fantastic.
He's got enough money. We don't need to pay him $500
You
every
gotta
single
love it.
year.
gotta love
We're sensible. So we're going to do a few more events. We're going to get into events a little bit. We think there's an opportunity, I think, doing some smaller scale events as well. But we don't want to really lose our focus either of trying to deliver just smart, essential information in the newsletter. So it's always sort of a balancing act to have a sort of keep trying to innovate and trying new things while not losing your focus on sort of how you got there. So we got
Absolutely.
more to
Yeah,
come.
for sure. Well, listen, Tony, I can't wait to see what the next year has in store for you, for the Ledger, and for the city. And with that, it's 11:30, so I'm going to toss it over to Lou, who's going to bestow you with the award.
Thank you.
Yes. And Patrick, let's pull up that beautiful original piece of artwork. Isn't that gorgeous? Well,
Beautiful.
behind the Interact Community Voice Award is a spirit of a leader who stands for a more inclusive community in Charlotte and just makes us better. A voice that allows us to thrive as a community. And we are so deeply inspired by Tony and Ledger. This award is an original piece of artwork by a young man named Elijah Kell, who is a good friend of our own Susie Adams. And Susie's been involved in all 3 of our original pieces of art. And this one is so special. Elijah is just a teenager. What he says about this particular, and he's so brilliant, what he says about this particular piece of glass is that it has been shaped and layered from the shards of broken glass to come together as a whole. Tony has reimagined a fractured model of journalism to build something new. The color reflects Ledger's logo and the black lines represent lines of type that certainly Tony remembers like none of us. So we will have this delivered to you today, Tony, and from Interact Studio, and also Charlotte is Creative, your nominator. We just thank you very, very deeply and wish you all the success. We have friends that I did forget to welcome who are live streaming on YouTube and surpassing our in the room Zoom attendees. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming, as well as those of you in the Zoom room. We've had a fabulous 2021 because we've chosen joy in the midst of a very difficult year, while still paying deep homage and experiencing the loss and the suffering that so many have. And certainly Tony is a bright spot in all of that. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Charlotte Ledger.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate it. I'm deeply humbled and grateful that you're recognizing our work, and just really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Well, we will see you on the flip side of the new year. Thanks also, Matt and Tim. And we love you all. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Congrats, Tony.
Hi. Thanks.
Thank
Best
you.
to you and Christina, Tony.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thanks, Christina.